Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're zoning in on a place that's catching a lot of eyes for property investment, Chaweng, over on Koh Samui.
That's right.
And the material we're drawing from today, it really comes from a real estate angle, looking squarely at the potential for Airbnb-type properties.
hmm
So if you're listening in wanting to get a quick but, thorough handle on the investment side of things, well, that's our mission today.
Basically, yeah.
To really unpack what investing in Chaweng Airbnbs might actually look like using the info we've got.
Yeah.
So Chaweng, why is it popping up on the investment radar?
Well, the core case for Chaweng, based on our source material, it really rests on a few things. First, there's just a solid demand for holiday rentals. Holiday homes, condos are popular.
Okay.
And that's really boosted by Chaweng's reputation, its lively nightlife, the huge range of places to eat. That just pulls tourists in.
Absolutely. That sort of convenience and, fun factor seems key for visitors. And the potential returns you mentioned, they sound pretty interesting. The source mentioned, 6-8% ROI, maybe more?
Yeah, potentially. ROI, return on investment, just tells you, how much you might earn back relative to your initial investment.
Right.
And the source does break it down a bit. Prime beachfront spots, they're suggesting maybe 6 to 10% gross ROI.
Okay, beachfront is premium.
Exactly. Then maybe condos near the main drag, perhaps 5 to 8%, and villas, maybe a little further inland, could be looking at something like 4 to 7%.
Okay.
But, and this is important, these are generally gross figures. Before you get to your actual profit, your net return, you've got to subtract costs.
Like management fees.
Management fees, maintenance, maybe marketing costs, taxes. All that stuff needs to be factored in.
That's a really crucial point. So it's not just the rent coming in month to month. There's also the idea of the property itself gaining value over time.
Precisely. The material we have really highlights that the Koh Samui market benefits from ongoing development, continued investment,
Okay.
which suggests a certain stability maybe and potential for that asset, your property, to appreciate. The source actually says Koh Samui real estate market is supported by ongoing development and investment, making it a safer bet than areas that rely on cheaper materials and questionable construction.
That quote really underlines the need for solid info, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when you're investing from afar.
Absolutely. Reliability is key.
Okay, so what's really driving all this rental demand in Chaweng? It can't just be the nightlife and the beach, surely.
Well, those are big draws, no doubt. But there are other things, too. Koh Samui has that year-round tropical climate, which is a huge plus.
Always attractive, yeah.
And Chaweng seems to pull in a really wide range of people, from backpackers on a budget right through to luxury travelers.
It's a broad appeal.
Yeah. And just generally growing awareness globally. More people know about Chaweng now as a destination.
So the financials look potentially good, the demand seems solid. But let's dig into Chaweng itself. What's the place like? What's the appeal beyond the investment figures?
Right, the actual experience. Well, we mentioned the nightlife. It's often described as, buzzing after dark, lots of beach bars, nightclubs.
What makes it stand out?
A lot of it is right on the beach, which is pretty cool. It definitely attracts a perhaps younger crowd looking for everything from casual drinks on the sand to more upscale clubs. And that means steady demand for short stays from that group.
Okay, so it definitely hits that market. What if you're not after the party scene?
Well, the beaches, obviously, are a massive draw. Chaweng Beach itself is that classic long, sandy stretch. Good for swimming, water sports. Families seem to like it, too. And the info points out there are other options close by, like Chaweng Noi, which is apparently quieter. And Lamai isn't far either, offering a different vibe.
Good to know there's variety. Is it all just sand and sea, though? Does the source mention anything about, cultural stuff?
Yeah, it does touch on that. While Chaweng is pretty developed for tourism, you can still connect with Thai culture. Things like visiting temples, maybe catching local festivals if you time it right.
Oh, interesting.
Even stuff like Thai cooking classes, or just wandering and maybe stumbling upon a local market, getting a sort of authentic feel for things.
So a mix of tourist convenience and some real local flavor.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit to the nuts and bolts of the rental market. What are the key realities investors need to get their heads around?
Seasonality. That's a big one. The source is clear. Peak season is roughly December to March. That's when demand spikes, prices go up.
Right, high season.
But then you have the monsoon season. Demand typically drops off then. And that obviously hits your occupancy rates, your income.
Yeah, that makes sense. You need to plan for those quieter months.
Yeah.
It's the advice there.
It really boils down to planning ahead. Being smart about your pricing, adjusting rates based on demand, maybe putting extra effort into marketing during the low season.
Trying to attract off-season travelers.
Exactly. And crucially, having a bit of a financial cushion, budgeting for those periods where occupancy might be lower. It's just about being realistic and adaptable.
Makes sense. And are certain types of properties doing better than others in Chaweng's rental scene?
Well, according to the source, it depends who you're trying to attract. Luxury villas, especially ones with amazing sea views, they're popular with families, bigger groups wanting that high-end experience.
Okay.
Then you've got smaller condos. They often appeal to solo travelers, maybe digital nomads. They want convenience, maybe a lower price point.
Uh-huh.
And guest houses get a mention too for the more budget-conscious crowd.
So quite a spread. What about actual prices? What sort of nightly rates are we talking?
The source gives some rough ranges, but stresses that, location, size, amenities, they all make a big difference.
Sure.
But ballpark figures, studios or small apartments, maybe 30 to 60 pounds a night. One or two bedroom condos, perhaps 50 to 100 pounds. And villas, they start around 150 pounds and go up from there. But really, you'd need to do your homework, see what similar places nearby are charging to set your own rates effectively.
Absolutely. Okay, so potential income is there, but we've touched on seasonality. What other specific challenges should investors be aware of?
Well, yeah, the seasonal swings, it's worth mentioning again because it's a major factor. Lower income, potential empty periods in the low season, you have to factor that in.
Definitely.
What else? The source also flags potential overcrowding, especially in that peak December to March window.
Ah, okay.
High season brings the crowds, which is good for bookings, but for some tourists, that sheer volume of people might actually be a negative. They might want somewhere quieter. Plus, it can strain local resources.
Yeah, I can see that. Too much of a good thing, maybe. What about the legal side of things? Rules and regulations.
That's critical. The info highlights that Thailand has specific laws about foreigners owning property and about running rental businesses.
And they can be tricky.
They can be complex, yeah, and they can change. So getting proper legal advice from someone who knows the local system is really, really recommended. Essential due diligence, basically.
Sounds non-negotiable, really.
Ah.
Okay, thinking about the guests now. What's Chang got in terms of local amenities and services? What makes it easy or attractive for someone staying there?
Well, food and drink-wise, loads of choice. Everything from street food stalls up to fancy international restaurants.
Yeah.
And we mentioned the nightlife bars, clubs, plenty of options.
And getting around?
Pretty straightforward, it seems. Roads are generally well kept. Taxis and tuk-tuks are easy to find. Scooter rentals are everywhere, though the source does add a little note of caution about the traffic.
Good to know.
You've also got the Song Fours, those shared pickup truck taxis, which are usually quite affordable. And a big plus, Samui International Airport is really close by. Big convenience factor.
Huge for travelers. What about essentials like healthcare if someone gets sick?
Also covered. There are clinics locally for smaller issues, and for anything more serious, bigger hospitals like Bangkok Hospital Samui are nearby. That offers peace of mind, both for you as an investor and for your guests.
Definitely important. So, putting Chaweng in context on the island, how does it stack up against other areas on Koh Samui for this kind of investment? The source compared it to a few others.
Yes, it gives a quick comparison. Lamai, for example, is positioned as quieter, maybe a bit more budget-friendly, popular with long-termers, and apparently growing for families, too. You might find, say, sea view land for sale there, different kind of opportunity.
Okay, quieter vibe.
Then there's Beaufort. That's got the charming fisherman's village, described as more relaxed, again, family-friendly, mix of old and new, boutique shops, nice restaurants, generally a bit pricier, maybe more suited to long-term rentals sometimes.
Right, different feel again.
And finally, Mainam. That's painted as the most peaceful option. More of an authentic Thai vibe, further from the main hustle. Ideal if you really want to escape the crowds. You might find things like Lakeview condos there.
So it really sounds like your investment strategy needs to match the area. Chaweng for the buzz and potentially higher income, Lamai or Mainam for budget or quiet, Beaufort for families or expats.
That's pretty much the gist, yeah. The best choice really depends on what your goals are and who you're trying to attract as guests.
Let's talk about financing. If someone's listening and thinking, okay, how do I actually pay for this? Wait, what are the options for foreigners buying in Chaweng?
Our source points to a couple of main paths. Local Thai banks, they do sometimes lend to foreigners, but the requirements can be quite strict. Credit history, proof of income, often a substantial deposit needed.
So not always easy.
No. It pays to shop around, compare what different Thai banks offer. The other route is international lenders, maybe specialists in overseas mortgages.
Are they easier?
Potentially more flexible on criteria, but you might find their interest rates or fees are higher. It's also worth checking with your bank back home, see if they have any international mortgage programs.
Okay, options exist, but require homework.
What about interest rates in Thailand generally? Are they similar to, say, the UK or US?
The advice is that they can be higher and maybe more variable than you're used to. So really important to check if you could still afford the payments if rates went up.
Good point.
Fixed rate mortgages might be an option for more certainty. And don't forget, currency exchange rates fluctuations there can impact your costs too. Bottom line, compare rates, add up all the fees, read the small print very carefully.
Sound advice for any big financial decision. So let's say you've bought the property. What about actually running it, especially if you're not living there? Property management.
Yeah, that's the next big piece. You basically choose manage it yourself or hire a professional company.
Pros and cons.
Self-managing saves you the management fee, obviously, but it takes a lot of your time dealing with bookings, guests, problems, and doing that remotely can be tough.
I can imagine. Hiring a professional service costs money, but they handle all the day-to-day stuff. Check-ins, cleaning, maintenance, guest questions. Takes the hassle away. Some people try a hybrid approach too.
Okay. What about just keeping the place looking good? Maintenance and upkeep.
Absolutely crucial. You need happy guests, good reviews that drives future bookings and income. So regular maintenance is key.
What does that involve?
The basics, really.
Right.
Regular cleaning between guests, fixing anything that breaks quickly, keeping any garden or pool areas tidy, just keeping the place in great shape.
And managing the guests themselves, making sure they have a good experience.
Big part of it. Being responsive if they have questions or issues. Providing really clear instructions for things like check-in, Wi-Fi, how things work. And just generally being a good host, even if it's remotely or through your manager. The source even suggests little touches like a welcome basket can make a difference. Boost those reviews.
Makes sense. Happy guests lead to more bookings. Okay, looking ahead now. What does the source say about market trends? What's the future looking like for Airbnb investment in Chaweng?
The outlook seems generally positive. They anticipate steady growth in tourism, especially drawing in visitors who spend a bit more.
Higher-end tourists.
Yeah, potentially. Driven partly by infrastructure improvements. And there's this shift towards experiential travel, people wanting unique experiences, not just a room.
So what does that mean for investors?
It could mean more bookings, maybe longer stays, higher demand for properties with good amenities, pools, nice views, maybe workspaces, and growing interest in sustainable or eco-friendly options too.
Interesting. And what about actual building, new developments?
The trend seems to be towards luxury. New projects are often high-end condos or villas, especially ones with those sought-after sea views, catering to that premium market.
Okay.
And actually, the information we're discussing, it comes from Ocean Worldwide. They're a luxury real estate agency, been based over in Phuket since 2004.
Right. Phuket.
Exactly, Phuket. Their director, Sandra O'Neill, has apparently helped thousands of families and investors over the years, focusing specifically on luxury residential property in Phuket and Koh Samui. So their perspective is definitely shaped by that high-end market focus.
That context is helpful. So luxury seems to be a key trend. What about the overall long-term picture? Is Chaweng still seen as a viable investment?
The source suggests investor confidence has picked up post-pandemic. More interest from overseas buyers, property values generally trending upwards in good locations.
That's positive.
And it circles back to that experiential travel idea. The recovery isn't just about numbers, it's about attracting tourists who want more than just a fly-and-flop holiday. They want experiences.
So the projections?
Generally, steady increase in tourism, particularly higher spending visitors, continued infrastructure work, moderate growth in property prices, especially in prime spots.
And people can find more info where?
The source points listeners to the Ocean Worldwide website for updates and property listings, again, given their focus on luxury in Phuket and Samui.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive on Chaweng Airbnb investment, drawing from that Ocean Worldwide perspective, it definitely seems like there's significant potential there. Popularity, strong rental demand.
Right.
But Yeah, you absolutely have to weigh that against things like the seasonal ups and downs, the potential for overcrowding, and navigating those local rules and regulations.
Thorough research is paramount. Understanding the opportunities, yes, but also the challenges.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe a final thought for you to consider. With tourism changing and this growing demand for real experiences, what unique value could you bring to the Chaweng rental market if you were to invest? Something to mull over. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.